It is what it was, what it shall be. We're back again. Today's video is called Spirit War Boot Camp number 94, and this is called the White Pill Antidote. So, how's everyone doing? How could I possibly be white pilled or even clear pilled in this world with everything crazy going on? Well, that's what we're going to talk about in today's video. So, for those that don't know, what is white pilled, right? So, most people are familiar with red pill, blue pill, right? So, red pill is where you kind of are ready to acknowledge that there's something fucky going on in the world. There's things aren't what we're told, things aren't what we're taught. There's something under the surface going on, right? And this is defined in opposition to the blue pill, which is what we call normies or NPCs, where they're like, oh, everything's fine. But having that view of fineness that's not really based on depth or scrutiny. And if you were to inquire about them of why they think it's fine or ask basic questions about things that are going on, they'll either deflect, ignore, or, try to evade. So they don't have a deep understanding of why they're blue pilled, right? It's kind of just an operating system that's running in the background that they have. So then we get into black pilled and white pilled, right? So black pilled is where you're like, everything's fucked. There's no redemption. It's all doom and gloom. Like, there's nothing good going on. There's no hope for the future. That's black pilled. And I think it's healthy to get into being black pilled every so often for a short frame of time. Like, that's part of our reality, is like pessimism. That's real. And the things that black pillars and doomers are like fixating on, I tend to think some of them are very real and very worthy of consideration. The problem comes in where you're just all the way onto the doom side, or that you see no redemption and no hope. I don't think most people can survive in that state for very long, and it's unhealthy, I feel, mentally and physically. So then there's the white pillars. What's that? That's what we're trying to talk about today, how to be white pilled or clear pilled. So white pilled is where you're like, everything's great, everything's awesome, and it can be either in a totally liberated way where you like have no worries in life and you're just truly happy, or it could be in a kind of a naive way where you're just putting blind faith into something. But again, when it comes under scrutiny or people were to question, like, why do you believe that way? There's not much under the surface, right? So I think there's two kinds of white pilling. There's the kind of naive white pill like that. And then there's like a deep white pill, this is almost like spiritual enlightenment, right? It's where you're like fearless, right? For whatever reason, like you just don't view any of the negativity as affecting you strongly. So this is kind of enviable for a lot of us who are skeptical about reality. Like, we kind of envy the freedom and joy that white pilling can offer. And especially right now, I think we're in a very intense, very stressful time for humanity on many fronts. But now let's talk about the final option, which is the clear pill. That's where basically you're this is a very high level, in my opinion, to be in the clear pill. And I think this is a good thing to be in also. So the clear pill has a lot in common with what Buddhists call the middle way, right? Or the Madhyamaka school of Buddhism, where it's like you're beyond both nihilism, right? That's the black pill, nothing matters kind of doomer system, nihilism. And you're beyond eternalism, which is kind of the white pill system, which is where like, oh, everything lasts forever. My soul is immortal. There's no worries about anything. Like, it's all fine, right? So the middle way is kind of in between, where you're like, well, nothing's really real, but it's also not really unreal. It's like maybe logic, as Robert Anton Wilson would say, maybe logic. Or you could say it's like kind of just depends. It's not a yes or a no. It kind of depends on subtle circumstances in every situation. So there's no absolutistic answer in the clear pill. So it's like, are demons real? Is the world run by satanic demons? Well, maybe. It's like you don't dismiss that. You're like, well, yeah, there's a lot of evidence for that. There's a lot of ways, or you can understand why someone might think that way, right? And then if someone were to ask, oh, is this whole world just a benevolent spiritual exercise where we're all being tested and put through stress and negative emotions to grow as eternal beings? Like, maybe that's the case. Like, there's certain evidence for that. but it's not 100%, and it's not for everybody. Like maybe that is the case in some ultimate sense, but there's plenty of people in the world that don't experience their everyday life in that kind of way. So that's kind of the clear pill. So the question is, how do we get out of black pill then? How do we, how do we fail to succumb to, the demoralization campaign, which is the strategy of the enemy to break our will and grind us down and so on like that, right? So that's what we're going to get into today. And so, but also we are going to go into some deep philosophical understandings that help us to decode the reality. If we were trying to get more red pilled and like trying to figure out what the hell is going on, this will be helpful with that as well. So why am I not black pilled? Why do I have the potential to be white pilled in this dire situation that we seem to be in with world warfare, like economic uncertainty, global chemical warfare and genetic warfare against the human race, AI apocalypse, like all the above. How can you be white pilled under those circumstances? Well, I'll just tell a story of my life, which is where everything that's becoming really trendy now, all of a sudden in the online conspiratard world, people that are all talking about and discussing the conspiracy and researching it and comparing notes, like all that. This stuff that, I got into all this in early 1990s. So that would be what, 30 something years, 35 years ago. So I've been doing this a long fucking time. And when I was researching in the beginning, I was flipping through the card catalogs in the library, taking notes on paper, right? Everyone was still using snail mail. Like all the billing was going through that. ATMs was still kind of like very rudimentary, right? There was very little graphical based internet at that time, So it was a very different world. So that's when I got into all this. And so I've been researching it that whole time. And so for decades, like I've been going deep down the rabbit hole, I listened to Bill Cooper back in the day when he was still alive. I listened to early Alex Jones back in the days of MySpace and stuff like that, or Google Video before YouTube existed, right? So I was getting into all that stuff and reading physical newsletters and different things like that. So I confronted all this dark shit that everyone's now freaking out about in the pop culture world. Like I started freaking out about all that. And so through acclamation, right, it almost flipped the script, because it's like, okay, this is the secret stuff that nobody's willing to talk about. And you're like, it's clearly affecting our lives. There's clearly some kind of cabal of black magic sorcerers like fucking with world events and controlling humanity's destiny. And so where most people would look at that and be scared or put off and be like, yuck, at a point for us red pillars in the early stages, like that becomes attractive. Like you want to seek out that information, and particularly in the 1990s where that information was very hard to find. So if you had come across something useful and actionable, something that could lead you forward and help you to progress with your research, like it's a joyful feeling. It's like, wow, you're really like, and you get all inspired and you're like, have all this energy to pursue the research in that context, right? And it seems mysterious, and it seems like something that no one else really knows. And so it gives you kind of an inside track on things. And so, when 9/11, for instance, happened and everyone's like waving their flags around, I'm like, oh, this is not good. This is going to change our entire economy and the entire public sphere. And I knew it right away. And I was like, this is not what we're being told. I don't trust any of this shit right away, because I had already kind of been inculcated into this world of, conspiracy theories, as it's so called by the CIA. But anyway, so that's kind of this enthusiastic red pill before it becomes the black pill, right? And so to me, any of the wildest shit that's coming out now, I'm like, yep, I've already like acclimated myself to that. It's kind of like, I've already built up an immunity to that to some extent, right? To the negative psychology that could come around with that. So that's one side of it. And the other side of it is because I have this profound faith, because in my feeling subjectively, like I feel like I've been guided to all this information before anybody else was talking about it, studying the Kabbalah and all the, Masonic stuff back in the early 90s, before there even was a real internet like we have now. I was already studying that. I was already studying herbal medicine and all these alternative health things and all these bizarre spiritual systems and everything like that decades and decades ago, before any of this became popular. So I'm already like inoculated against all this stuff on the good side and the bad side. And I have already like a infrastructure internally in my internal world to like classify all this information and categorize it and be able to process massive volumes of new data and information. And that's kind of why I'm here, and that's kind of why I do what I do, is because I realize not everyone is wired the way that I am, and that I got a big leap, or like a multi-decade leap on researching all these topics. So I want to be able to share that and be helpful to people who are probably the mass of humanity right now is powerfully confused and overwhelmed by all this stuff. And I'm not, and I like it, and I enjoy researching it. You know what I mean? And so that's what I'm here doing, and hopefully this is useful to people. So now let's go a little deeper, right? And say, so one other thing that helps me to remain white-pilled or clear-pilled is the fact that I understand the fundamental nature of reality, right? And so I understand that the same mechanisms that are being used by the cabal or the evil archy or whatever you want to call it, the power structure, like the same things that they use to use their tactics and to get their results that they want and to change the nature of their outer reality. Like, I know that I have equal access. They don't have any privileged access to anything that I also don't have access to. So on that basis, like, I can look at their tactics and what they do and their methodologies and how they influence the world, how they change the world around them, how they gain power and wealth and all these things. And I recognize that I can do that exact same thing. And the thing that makes that effective or easy is having a deep understanding of their methods, watching and observing their methods, looking at what works, what doesn't work, what kind of fails and gets exposed and gets dismantled, versus what is so subtle and so powerful that they can script even their opposition to help them, right? That's true genius, in my opinion, is a strategist who gets their enemy to do the work for them, And so by understanding these concepts and these kinds of methods that they're using, you can co-opt that power, and you can start shaping reality and start creating cultural movements and wielding this massive influence, just like the evil arcs do. You can do it. You have the same power. There's nothing that puts them above you, really. And I've come to learn that in a profound way. So let's break that down and let's try to understand, what am I really talking about? Well, okay, so the best way that I could think of to explain it is the concept of, in science, and of course I always try to bring everything back to science, right? And the field theory, this concept of field theory. So the idea that energy is always moving all around us, and that you can put energy into the field and then you can extract energy from the field, right? And just like our phones and Bluetooth and everything is tuned to these specific frequency bands, right? So they can, to put energy in and out, right? The concept of tuning and attunement is very important, so that you can selectively like filter in and out different things, right? So this is very important. So then the question of, how is this used, right? How does our adversary use that, and how can we personally use that? Well, let's look at, like I was saying in the previous video, the most powerful arm of all the world intelligence agencies and even finance and even the military, the most powerful weapon that they have is media, okay? It's the ability of information control, because information control is the common denominator of propaganda, disinformation, misdirection, psychological warfare, information warfare, all the above, and spirit war. All those things revolve around the common factor of communications and media. So this includes so-called news, this includes entertainment, this includes music, visual arts, every kind of cultural production that there is. This is within that scope. And this is what magic really is, okay? Because we exist in a co-creative relationship with so-called outer reality, the material world, right? And the concept of spirit war is try to help people understand that there's a higher tier above materiality. Like whatever is making your life unpleasant in the material world, there's a higher level. So you can subvert and change around that and gain power and dominance over whatever material circumstances are there by accessing this higher level, by going upstream from the material causality that seems to cause us so much annoyance and problems, right? We can go above that into the spiritual domain. And in order to do that, you have to have a working type of knowledge of how all that system operates, right? And this is kind of what I'm trying to get into at the moment. So look at mass media, right? So look at how pre-programming, right? Pre-scripting events before they happen, using science fiction, using films. And everyone knows a million examples of things that were existing in film before they happened in the real world. Like The Simpsons predicted it is one of the common things. There's a million videos out there talking about things on The Simpsons that happened decades later, right? So there's two ways of looking at that. It could be predictive programming in the sense that they already have these objectives and plans that they've already put into motion, and they're just putting it out there in order to soften the target and get people ready for what they want to occur and to predispose people's reactions to it in a certain way. And then there's the more subtle form, that many people might not accept, which is the idea of lesser magic. So the concept of a voodoo doll type of operation, or like a blueprint if you're building a building. So you take a manageable, small, resource, simple thing that's easy to do. Like it's much easier to build a scale model of something than the full size object of a giant building or a freeway or something like that. But you got to test it. You got to be able to test it and try multiple trial runs or beta tests of something before you invest all the resources to make it happen, right? And that's another way of doing it. So this is the things that fall into this category would be like the Olympic opening ceremonies from 2012, predicting the COVID pandemic and so on like that. So in a way, and Jason Breshears has a really good way of this. He describes it as imprinting the field or charging the field and then discharging the field, right? So I find that to be really valuable. And this comes back to our analogy talking about field theory and how there's different frequency bands within the electromagnetic field. And, if you want to communicate to someone like through a walkie-talkie or a cell phone, like you have to have the frequency information to tune it to them so that they know where to go to pull out that same information. And so this is coming into play when we're talking about both predictive programming and so-called lesser magic. So it's where you want to have more or less a symbolic resonance. And this can include everything from colors, sounds, physical motions, whatever it is, but you're basically creating a syntactic unit, or what I'm calling an information hologram. So it's like a metaphorical way of encoding a cluster of different events together. Anyone who's watched those iPet Goat videos knows exactly what I'm talking about. So you're talking about like a symbolic cluster of different information and associating different things together so that you're kind of seeing like this event and this event are somehow connected in their timeline. So that's one example of how this all operates. And again, so the reason I'm telling you this is because just the same way that we see the so-called evilarchy or the cabal, like using the same methodology, we can also use that methodology. We can imprint our own consciousness. We can imprint our own physical body. We can imprint our own surroundings. And this is what the really high-level spiritual disciplines are doing. This is why Tibetan Buddhists create sand mandalas and why they create these different paintings and these different architectural structures and these temples, like all the above. It's a way of imprinting the material world and the field around us with light, with sound, with material objects, with symbolic meaning, with narratives, with stories and myths, right? So in essence, you're charging the field. And so what I'm trying to get to here is the clear pill understanding, the understanding that the reality in which we exist is a neutral field, right? It doesn't care about what we would term as like good and evil. It doesn't care about whether you're poor or rich, whether you're beautiful or ugly. Like it doesn't care about any of that, right? From the point of view of the material world that we exist within, like everything's energy and information, right? And all living beings, even animals, and so on, even little germs, like they all exist equally in relationship to this field of energy and information in which we exist, which is the basis of the material world. Like everyone has equal access to that, right? So it's not, nobody has a privilege. The only privilege comes from the depth of your understanding of this dynamic. So people that understand it at a high level, and that have been researching, that have been flexing their muscles and flexing all their skills in relation to this, they're more powerful. But it's not like God gave them some special privilege, or like, the Illuminati initiation gave them some special privilege, just like flipping a switch. It's like, it's just like being an athlete, right? Like, wherever you're at in physical domain, like, you can improve through effort, through repeated cycles of making effort and trial and error and so on, like that. So this is what we need to do. And this is the whole context of the spirit war, and why I phrase it in such a term, is I'm trying to lay out a systematic protocol of different tactics and techniques, and to show you and symbolically decode what our adversaries are doing and why it works or doesn't work, and to basically democratize all these tools and share it out with people and show people how it is being done. And I'm not, of course, not the only person that's doing this. Different people are doing it all over. And so many creators are out there trying to break it down and decode the symbolism and show this methodology, right? So that we can all use it. And the greatest power comes from a collective use, like things that we can all agree upon, right? Like this is something that I really want to get to in today's video. So a lot of people have referenced and have caught on to the fact of why they use all this symbolism, right? Because it's a common language that people share over thousands of years, and these religious texts and these different things that everyone has access to, and these pop culture things like Star Wars, Star Trek, whatever it is, these or Game of Thrones or whatever it is, these really huge media things that all people have a shared connection to. They can understand it. It's a symbolic language that they share, right? And a lot of them have a lot of emotional charge, right, with it, especially the religions. So by using these types of symbolic codes that are widely shared, this gives a lot of power. It gives a lot of mimetic power to these symbol constructs, and it basically creates like a predisposition amongst massive groups of people, right, to connect with this information. Okay. So, and like Super Bowl halftime show, for example, there's going to be tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people watching these particular events, or like 9/11, or like the JFK assassination. This is what sorcerers use. Attention is the currency, mental focus and emotional charge. This is the currency of magic. This is how the world is manipulated and controlled. So once you have an understanding of this, you can selectively choose symbolic systems and syntactical codes, words and phrases, and you can claim them for your own. Even the so-called weapons of the enemy, you can redirect that energy. You can repurpose all that energy for yourself, right? And this is why I'm clear-pilled, right? Why I don't believe in the rigid concepts of good and evil. Like, I believe even something that's created by a person who's the most opposite to you, who you have all this negative energy around, like, you can repurpose what they're doing, what they took to be an attack against you. You can, if you're sufficiently informed on these matters and sufficiently masterful in using them, you can literally redirect everything that they're putting out and convert it into positivity. And even the Epstein situation, like, that's really true. Of course, this is the most heinous, nasty, evil shit in the world, but look what's happening as a result of that, right? We have the first arrest of a royal family person in hundreds and hundreds of years, and it wasn't just Prince Andrew either. This has happened in Belgium, the Netherlands, different countries all over. Now we're seeing this royal order of jesters, right? We're seeing these elite people, pedophiles, child traffickers, human traffickers, warmongers, weapons merchants. They're all getting taken down. I kind of see it as this big dragnet. Like, once Epstein got down and everyone in the world started talking about it, it's like this big net, because look at all the thousands, if not millions of people that's all connected to you. So you pull the one piece of this big net, and it's like putting tension and pulling pressure on all these other connected nodes in the system. And so what before would have been considered this decentralized, powerful network, now it's getting dismantled piece by piece with leverage, through the use of leverage. And they're the same structures that they're using to create financial terrorism or warfare or whatever, spycraft, whatever it is, the same networks that they're using for that can now just be flipped around, and you can use the dismantlement of that very network to bring down the entire system. Their economic monopoly, their information media monopoly, it's getting taken down. Big name players, big name celebrities coming down, taking it down to where now all these networks and all these power structures do not have the power that they once had. People are looking at them skeptically. They're opting out. They're stopping paying money to Netflix. They're stopping buying shit on Amazon. They're stopping with all this kinds of stuff. Stop watching the Super Bowl. Stop watching the Oscars. Stop watching the MTV Music Awards or whatever kind of bullshit, the Grammys. Like, people are divesting out of that. And so the power of it is coming down, down, down. And as their methodology is exposed, they're no longer able to exert influence, and they're making all these desperation moves. That's what we're seeing around us. And that's why I'm white pilled. I'm like, this is all working to my benefit. And to the greater extent you have an understanding of these dynamics, is the greater extent you can take advantage. Basically, you can gain benefit out of this, and you can see all the ways that this can serve your self-improvement, your greater intelligence, your greater physical health, by looking at how humanity is being attacked. Like, this gives a lot of motivation. It gives a lot of information sharing, because people realize the desperation of the situation we're in. They're putting so much energy into sharing information, and so now, and cooperating together. People that would have never teamed up before are now like, oh dude, the shit's hitting the fan. It's now or never. We all got to team up, and we all got to take down this network, both sides of the aisle. Liberals and conservatives. None of the political football teams are winning out of this. Everyone's being victimized. Everyone's having a bad time. So why don't we all team up on the common adversary that we have? And this is already naturally happening, and that's why I'm white pilled, if not clear pilled, right? Like, I'm seeing all this as an amazing thing. And of course there is terrible aspects. Like, I don't deny that. It is very terrible, and it's quite terrible that so many people had to suffer to bring us where we are. But let's not let all this sacrifice and all this pain and suffering be in vain. Let's capitalize on it. Let's use it to propel us forward into a golden age for humanity. We're now, by forcing all these issues into the light, like, we can use all these same types of technologies and all these same types of informational warfare and these same types of psychological mastery to flip it around and use it to bring mass enlightenment and mass awareness and economic liberation and dismantling all these abusive power structures. Like, it's underway now. The ball has gotten to be rolling. And, personally, I have a lot more information. Like, if you compiled all the 1,000 or plus videos that I've made, this isn't even 1% of what I've got. I know so much information about all this. Like I said, I've been working on this for decades right now. And so what I'm trying to do is share all this information so that other people can pick up the ball. And I know I'm already seeing, with all the support that I'm getting from people like Tex Magi and all this community, like, people are already on the same track as me. They're on the same trail. And each of us has like little different pieces of information, and through collaboration and mutual support, like, we're doing something, and we're accomplishing something that none of us could accomplish alone. And so that's what I'm here to do, and that's why I'm trying to propagate this message. I'm hoping people are finding this valuable. I'm hoping that, because I'm in a unique position to where I can pretty much donate almost entirety of my time to working on these things. And so, that's something not a lot of people can do. And so other people who aren't like me, who have regular jobs and stuff, and who have a lot of financial resources or whatever, they can contribute to me, and they can, so through that cooperation, and I'm in return giving you access to information that you might have never encountered and might have never been able to come across. And I'm helping strategize and connect dots and show how all these different things, these seemingly disparate subjects of psychological warfare, media manipulation, high technology, quantum biology, like, I'm connecting all these dots. And I know there's other people out there that have tons of information that I could need and that I could use to propel this whole thing forward. And so that's what we're doing today. And there's so much more to come. But this has been Spirit War 94. If anyone wants to support me, I got multiple links in my bio on YouTube and Instagram. How you can support, even a tiny amount is very helpful. Like, everything helps. Even $1, makes a big difference to me. And so I'm going to be continually putting out more and more content, and everything that I receive in terms of support is going to get put back into this project. and we're going to be give, give, give. We're going to be add, add, add. We're going to be build, build, build in a synergistic way. I'm going to help us white pill the masses who are also discouraged and demoralized by that. I'm going to show the flip side of the equation and why so much of this could be leading towards human liberation if we all cooperate and we all take up arms in the spirit war and bring a victory that can be shared by all humanity and other life forms, why we can heal the planet, why we can create economic systems that allow us to protect nature and to decentralize all this industrial production so that we're all living in a beautiful natural community and we're using the high technology of the spirit world to build flourishing environments, whatever type of climate and whatever type of region we may live in. The technology for us to thrive and share and live in cooperative economics is at a level that it's never been at before. And that's why I feel winning the spirit war is within view. And if you agree and you want to participate, keep following me and we're going to see more next time. Thanks a lot for watching. We'll see you next time.